Rogers TV Durham would like to acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation of the Mississauga Nation. May we respectfully honor the knowledge and understanding of the Indigenous stewards of these ancestral lands and ensure that the voices of the First Peoples are represented in our collections, programs, and services.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
And welcome to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Oshawa MPP Jennifer French. Been quite a while. How was your summer?
It's still ongoing, Deborah. I'm refusing to admit that we're leaving warmer weather, but it's been a good balance. I've managed to spend some good quality time in the community, which has felt like a challenge when you're at Queen's Park. So we've been doing a lot of connecting with folks in the community and lots of good summer events. So it's been really positive.
All right, so much to talk about. Let's start with the Green Belt controversy and your take on this.
Well, there's a lot going on. One of the things that we have heard from the beginning from the community broadly, regardless of partisan stripe, is that folks have been having an eye on this. It has been really fishy from the beginning. And of course, with the Auditor General's report and just one piece after another rolling out, the kind of peek behind the greasy scenes, it's awful. So even folks who don't live in the area, who maybe aren't that familiar with the Greenbelt, recognize corruption when not just when they see it, when it's being proven over and over again. So it's pretty messy. We've been calling as the opposition for a lot of things, but specifically, let's get back to the legislature, make those changes, and keep the Greenbelt protected. Return those sections of the Greenbelt that need to stay protected. And we don't have any takers on the government side, but obviously, there's a lot of interest in this, and a lot of folks who wouldn't necessarily identify with, left or progressive or even the environment, but they see that this is, lying and cheating, stealing and fixing the game, and folks are not having it.
I guess the question for many people was, is that how does a minister not know what deals his people are making?
Yeah, I don't buy any of that. So sitting in the legislature, I remember, and I'd have to go back to the dates, but I remember when Minister Clark was dodging the question of, did they know? Did anyone know? Did your office tell anyone? And he dodged and he danced and he dodged and he danced and he wouldn't answer. And then it was like something changed. He came back on a Monday and all of a sudden was just deny. And now we know that was a lie. And there is no credible way in my mind that he wouldn't know. And if he chose not to know, there was a reason for that. The plausible deniability, it's not plausible that he didn't know what was happening. Whether he knew the details or not, he knew what was transpiring. So anyway, I'm personally disappointed. We've all worked together in that legislature for a long time. And that is not just behavior unbecoming a minister. That is not what we want from our elected officials ever.
So I guess the question becomes, the government said it needed to do something to increase the availability of housing, which is in short supply. Clearly, you do not feel that this was the way to do it. What would an NDP government do? How would they increase the supply of affordable housing?
Well, and you just used the magic word. You said affordable. Handing the reins over to, to developers and just hoping that they're going to build a mixed, a mixed range of housing, which is what is needed. Affordable means different things to different people at different points in their life, right? I was at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and pleased to meet with delegations from across the province. And we heard over and over that when you look at the housing spectrum from emergency shelter, transitional housing, supportive housing, that starter home or the downsize home, all the way up to the McMansions, right? Everything in that range, that there's backlogs at each step. And so ensuring and taking a leadership role as government, taking a look at how do we not just increase supply, but accessibility. Folks can't afford rent right now. We have people living where they are. They have a roof over their head, but they can't afford to feed themselves. It's not the right housing for them. So, I mean, there's a range of things. We've been talking about rent control and what that looks like. We've been talking about, the mixed zoning. I mean, these are strategies and solutions that have been around a long time. But it would come from what we're being told by the folks who know what they're talking about. What we have with this Doug Ford Conservative government is they haven't been listening. They're beholden to the folks with big, deep pockets, as we have seen, and they don't magically build housing. When you talk to the municipalities who say, we've issued all these permits, but the developers are choosing not to build, that's not a municipal problem. I mean, it becomes all of our problems, but that's where the government is not forcing them to use those permits to actually follow through and build. And we do have to make it clear and require a mix and range of housing. So anyway, the government had a task force, their housing task force. In that report, their government's own task force said, we don't need to touch the Greenbelt. There's enough land, and municipalities and their plans, like there's enough land to build the homes for the foreseeable future. This Greenbelt mess is not about housing. Never has been about housing. Convenient tagline, but not a real thing.
Okay. Pretty soon,
I get mad.
Will be, well, the legislature will be back in session. Let's talk about the upcoming session and what your hopes are for it, what we should be watching.
Well, some of the things that I'm heading back with personally, as I said, I've been meeting with constituents and in the community, but across communities, we've all been hearing about affordability, the impossible costs of literally everything we need as families, as folks to feed ourselves and pay our bills. So I've got a number of voices from our community about that cost of living challenge, and I'm hoping that the government starts to pay attention and look at things differently. They've been turning their backs on a lot of folks. Another piece is healthcare. Things have got, like, we've been talking about privatization. We've been talking about profits being kind of, siphoned out of the system to go to private agencies and whatnot, while our hospitals are struggling to retain staff. That is no longer just a conversation at Queen's Park. We're dealing with folks who can't get the care that they need, who sit in those emergency rooms that are overwhelmed, and the waiting is it's shocking. And people are now starting to realize, as they are interacting with the healthcare system, it has been allowed to degrade. It's not getting the investment that it needs, and the government needs to allow hospitals and healthcare workers to pay folks what they need to be able to retain staff, to attract staff. We're not getting the care that we deserve in Ontario anymore, and it's coming as a shock, unfortunately, people. So we're heading back with those priorities. Of course, yes, the Greenbelt and overall corruption, because everywhere we start to poke, we realize that systems aren't what we hoped they would be. But I think that we do have to stay the course in terms of real experience of people in the province, which is just becoming far less partisan and far more, person based. Like, people cannot get by right now, regardless of party.
How do you get the money to do what you want to do and what should be done without raising taxes and without it coming back on the taxpayer, who is clearly stretched to the max?
Yeah, they are. And with Bill 23 that, has now created havoc with development charges that municipalities can't collect, we're probably going to see that on our tax bills now. Like, the money comes from us always. So, and not to be flip, although I'm so fed up with this government, and they have kept us away from the legislature for an extra long time to avoid accountability. So I'm a little revved. When you see stories about how much money they've spent on lawyers to protect the mandate letters, like, it's insane. That's a lot of money. When you talk about the money that they're willing to allow, like $8.3 billion that just, that didn't necessarily come from our taxes and go to developers. It's, it's sneakier than that. But money is not being invested in our public sector. And the thing is, when hospitals are forced to pay these, they're being held hostage by these private nursing agencies, right, that have been allowed to not just thrive, but take over. That money doesn't go as far. So they're paying whatever 2 or 3 times as much for a nurse working beside a colleague that, is paid by the hospital, and the hospital hasn't been allowed to actually pay fair wages to retain. So we're bleeding them in one direction. We're not allowing them to invest in their own system. It's that kind of misuse of funds that I don't think it's magically we need it to rain money. I think we need to rein in this government so that money goes where it's supposed to, and we actually can see better health and wellness and growth in our communities.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break, more of our conversation with Oshawa MPP Jennifer French after this. Don't go away.
I belong here.
You may think I don't fit in.
That I don't look the part.
But to me, curling is more than a sport.
It's my community.
Together, we can sweep away the barriers.
Create spaces where we all belong.
And experience the joy of curling.
I belong here.
We belong here. We unite, and united we curl.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get up to 200 regular season games. Say NFL Sunday Ticket into your voice remote.
You're watching Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. This week we are in conversation with Oshawa MPP Jennifer French. Pardon the frog in my throat. Okay, so we were talking about when we went to break the upcoming session and what people should really be watching for. I also want to ask you for an update on your private members bill, Bill 15, which amends the Highway Traffic Act. Just explain to us again what is in this bill and where are we at in the process?
It's actually been a really interesting process. So this bill is the Fairness for Road Users Act. And in the unfortunate event of a collision that causes death or results in serious bodily harm, what we were hearing through the years. This was an issue brought to us by motorcycle riders like 20 years ago, and it has been a continued process since then, advocating for justice in the event when something goes horribly wrong. Judges were able only to have a $500 penalty be the result, regardless of circumstance. So no one was losing their license. That this could happen multiple times. It was not a penalty that was just in any way, and families left behind or people who were seriously injured had that insult added to the injury of a $500 fine. So the bill sets out to change the penalty structure to allow judges at sentencing. So if someone is found to have contravened the Highway Traffic Act, and let me be clear, this is only if someone is injured or killed in the event of a Highway Traffic Act violation. So this is not a drunk driving thing. This is if you make an improper left turn or flip an illegal U-turn or something like that, which is a lesser infraction, but can still have terrible consequences. And it allows the judge to factor in all of the circumstances at sentencing. So if charged and if at sentencing, the judge thinks there should be something else, higher penalty, license suspension, then they would have those tools. So I have been working with the Ministry of Transportation and the staff and the former minister. And interestingly, my bill was the only opposition bill that I'm aware of that was pulled in the summer to committee. So we had experts come. I had to sit in the hot seat and present the bill. And it was a really good discussion by all parties. The government is interested in fixing this issue. My bill may not be perfect. I'm not pretending it is. We actually learned that there's some wording pieces that need to be figured out so that it holds water, so to speak. But it was what committee actually should be. It was quite fascinating. So that it was a process that doesn't usually happen. So it has not yet been called for the next step of that. We still have work to do, but I would say it's moving forward, and I have a relationship with the folks on the government side where they also recognize this as something to remedy. So that's good news, and that's the first that has happened in 20 years that we have actually made a bit of headway. So it continues.
Why did you bring this forward in the first place? What led to this?
Because I serve the province as the official opposition critic for infrastructure, transportation, and highways. A lot of the transportation issues, come to and through me. There are motorcycle riders, bikers' rights organization that have been advocating for this for years. I've been working with the cycling community, and this is just a piece. It's not preventative per se, but it is a piece of justice. I mean, there is no justice if someone is killed, but the hurt and harm left behind for families is awful. I've heard it at committee with other government transportation bills, the need for this. And so we sought to fix it. So I have some other issues in the works in terms of private members' bills, some electric vehicle focused ones that stay tuned, that are more from local industry and local need. And of course, automotive is our thing here in Oshawa. So I've got some other irons in the fire, but this one came from families and from people who use our roads.
Now, of course, as the critic for infrastructure and transportation, recently the NDP party, a communication said, transportation in Ontario is in trouble and we need serious solutions. How are we in trouble?
I think that was a press release that came out. My colleague who looks at the transit file and I, who handled the transportation file, whether we're looking at money being dumped into bad ideas like the 413, the Bradford bypass, the government pet projects. That's a lot of money being spent on projects that benefit those same developers we've been talking about with the Greenbelt. Messy situation. People are not having the transit that they need. It's not being built fast enough or accountably. Like at a lot of these P3s, it's just good money after bad with no eyes into the process. And that's sort of the nature, right? The government hands it over to the financiers who contract it out, and then we just cross our fingers it comes back on time and on budget, which we've seen messy examples in Ottawa of it not. But we need the Bowmanville extension. Hopefully that's moving forward by everyone's account. But we don't have stations. There's no money in the budget for stations. The government has a new system that they're hoping for, private investment to build these stations. So hopefully we'll have the rail and a place to get off of the train. But our neighbors up north and rural communities that have been begging for safer roads, for winter road maintenance, we don't see the investment. We don't see the leadership. And we don't see, like, a lot of this has been brought close to the chest with this government. And so it's a lot of chasing. I'll be doing report writing on the estimates when we get back to the legislature in the fall. And there's a lot to delve into. So that's on the highways side of thing. But we've got a new Minister of Transportation. I always look forward to working with whatever minister, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked well with the previous Minister of Transportation, especially on your private members bill, and now they change it up.
Yeah, I can't imagine Carolyn Mulroney would want to be too close to the 413 as folks are kind of peeling back the layers of corruption and PC donations. So she's in Treasury Board. I don't know if that's why, but I can't imagine whoever's got the transportation file when it comes to the 413 and all of this heading back into this session.
Okay, I also want to ask you, I know you wanted to talk about the backdoor mission, over $1 million in funding announcement. The backdoor mission did great work prior to COVID, but throughout the pandemic and the lockdowns, boy, did they sure
it's
mobilize quickly, and they were there to help those who were really in need.
The backdoor mission has obviously evolved, and it's now, mission united with the different agencies and the hospital and mental health folks and experts from different agencies who have come together to make that a hub. It's a model that, if we saw it across other communities, I know would be very important in not just supporting the needs, but also in better utilizing our resources, right? So the backdoor mission and Mission United, I was glad to sound the alarm actually before the election. You may recall that their funding was going to evaporate through no one's fault. So there had been a lot of stuff during the pandemic that kind of was new. And the government, I worked with the government then, the then Minister of mental health and addictions, Minister Tabolo. That was before the election, and they saved them. We came out the other side of the election, and I continued the advocacy, invited him to Oshawa, followed through on that invitation. And to his credit, he came and spent half of a day with eyes on the place, feet on the ground, meeting with the folks, having an understanding of the work that happens there, a real understanding of just how much medical need is needed. Folks who are street involved, always going to the emergency room. That's not appropriate for anyone. So anyway, he made the decision to invest $1.1 million with a focus on that medical care. So it's a year, it's good, but I was a big part of that in making those connections. And, I know there's a lot of question and concern around homelessness in Oshawa, but there is homelessness in Oshawa as in other communities. And, those are our neighbors, and they need medical care, and they need that warm hand to the next service. And so that bought us a year, but there are lots of other issues that we have to tackle when it comes to homelessness. We've got to get people the housing that they need and the support with that housing, right? It can't just be give someone a roof, but without the mental health supports, et cetera. So I'm really proud of that. Like, there are people who will continue to build relationships, get well, or, be able to keep living because of the work that happens there. So And the minister and I have worked very well on that project. And he's come back. I've heard he's snuck back in to put, to walk around without an invitation to really see the work that happens. And he's quite committed to this investment. So I'm proud of the work that I've done, but the work that has been happening downtown. It's remarkable with the agencies.
Yeah, definitely money well spent. And I think when we spoke with them during the pandemic, the point that really struck me was that they were able to mobilize and make things happen and arrange things and get things going in weeks, whereas, anywhere else it would take months or even years.
Well, a lot of things came out of that pandemic that we never thought possible, things that had to happen because they were needed. And it continues to evolve, right? Like we need people to have the housing and the care that they need, but until that time, and while we do that work, people with, the wounds on their feet, they deserve care and in the right place where they can access it. So anyway, quite remarkable, the work that had to happen to make that happen. And so that was a win for our community.
Okay, we're rapidly running out of time. I want to ask you about your thoughts on the renovation and restoration of Queen's Park.
So remember, I used to be one of the deputy speakers. I'm not anymore. I've now been made the chair of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. So there are only 2 opposition members who chair government committees, and I'm one of them. It's been very interesting work. All of the parties come to the table, and we have been meeting with experts and traveling around and looking at different legislative challenges in different jurisdictions. Ottawa being the one that people, of course, are familiar with in terms of renovation restoration, but our building is 130 years old, give or take, and a lot of challenges that go with that. So the legislature, based on our report of kind of the findings, has made the determination that we are working towards that renovation restoration. So our committee now has to meet with stakeholders, meet with the experts to figure out where we go, what that looks like, how the business of the legislature continues, but also looking forward, doing that restoration work as economically as we can, as responsibly as we can, but making sure it's accessible, equitable, that anyone coming to the building thinks, yeah, this is awesome. This is what Ontario should be. And it's quite a remarkable project to be a part of. Lots of layers, lots of criticism. All of it is important because we want to do this well. And so I hope that the committee will continue to work as well as it has. And I really hope that the government takes whatever comes from that work and does things transparently and accountably.
Okay, and on that, we are out of time. Jennifer French, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Debra.
And until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison. Bye for now.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
It's so convenient to grab a carton of milk. It took over 60 years to get to this point. It sounds odd, but if you didn't have a cow in the early 1900s, you'd rely on a family farm. The Weary family farm was one of the contributors to the production and distribution of our favorite cookie companion via scoop and pail or by bottle. Then, in the 1930s, with the demand for pasteurized milk, the Weary family partnered with 10 local farmers, raising the funds required for pasteurization technology. Ideal Dairy, the building still standing, became one of the fastest growing dairy distributors and eventually the largest and only dairy in Oshawa. In time, it was sold to Beatrice, a brand we still fill our glasses with today.
Online betting is booming. Booyah! Woo! win big